right, in this video, we're gonna be installing a Centerforce solid street twin, a dual disc clutch setup in our Corvette Z06. So here is the clutch here. We're gonna get into the exact specifics of it. You'll see a whole bunch of stuff, including a Corvette behind us. So we're actually rebuilding the transmission. So if you guys are curious on how to get to the actual clutch itself on one of these Z06s, it is a big pain. You gotta remove essentially the whole car, and you gotta support the front of the car because once you take all that weight out of the back, it definitely becomes front biased. So you'll see here, we've got a stock clutch in here, or what appears to be a stock clutch. This car is new to us, so I really don't know the history on it, but I would say that that looks pretty stock, and if it isn't stock, it definitely looks like it needs replacing. So we do have a Pro Charger kit on this, as well as a heads cam vehicle on this. So we need a good clutch setup that's gonna take the abuse that we're gonna be doing at the track. So this is the starting point where we're gonna get to. So I'm gonna go ahead and start removing all these bell housing bolts, get this off so we can get access to the actual clutch. So let's remove this stuff and let's get to work. All right, so I just want to show you guys what I used to get in at least the Corvette body to get to the bell housing bolts. So I had a little universal here with a series of wobble extensions, but ended up working out real well. But if you guys have been following along on the channel with this build whatsoever, you'll know that we bought this car a couple months ago for cheap. It's clean title Z06 and it had a Pro Charger on it, heads cam. But there's just every single time we touch something, we notice something else crazy. And in this case, I just took this off and look at that. Something or somebody windowed this aluminum bell housing at some point. But like, look at how corroded it is. It's been there or like that for a long time. So anyways, this is how this comes off. It's a series 10 mil bolts that go through here that holds kind of this dust shield or the lower half of the cover. And then everything else is a 13 mil. So if you guys are curious, this is how many, any of your GM is gonna be the same. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6, 7 across the bottom. But anyways, that's off. And now we've got this rusty clutch. So I'm gonna take off all the pressure plate bolts to get this off. And then we'll go ahead, our disc will come out and we can get to the flywheel, get all this old garbage out of here. All right guys, so just took off the pressure plate as well as the disc, and I found out what decided to leave the chat. So here's our pressure plate. Look at this. This piece is lodged in here. It's the, I think it's part of the finger, but anyways, you'll notice one of them's lodged in here and two of these tabs are missing right here. So I'm not sure what this part exactly is called on the pressure plate, but there's one piece, and obviously the other one went right through the side of there. So yeah, and I mean, this disc is absolutely hammered. So this car has definitely lived a rough life, but yeah, all that trash out there. You can see all the heat marks there. Now we're down to just the flywheel. So we're gonna go ahead, zip off these bolts for our flywheel, take this off, and then we can work on the pilot bearing, which hopefully shouldn't be too dramatic, but they can sometimes be fun. So we'll go ahead, pop this off, and then we'll start working on getting the old pilot out of there. All right, so I'm showing you guys this slide hammer and puller set. So we're gonna grab this here and we'll go over to the vehicle. So the kit does come with a bunch of different pilot bearings depending on which pilot bearing. Follow the instructions, or you can use the general principle of looking at the old one. So here we are here, and on the LS's, there's actually a plug in there that's holds oil on the other side. So you don't want to use like a hydraulic method, like a bread method or anything silly like that, or grease. Otherwise you'll end up pushing that plug in. So that's why we're going to use an actual puller. So we're going to put this in here, then we're going to expand it, put on our slide hammer, and then we'll be able to get this pilot bearing out of here. All right, so to get this out, this thing, at least on my car, with it being 20 plus years old at this point, 22 years old, this was absolutely in here. So I just got it to start budging. What I did do is I didn't want to take any open flame or anything crazy like that, but I could not get this thing to budge, and I just took a heat gun right here. I stayed away from our seal area because my seal's still good. You can see there's no leaking of any sorts, but took a heat gun in here, and then this thing started to budge. So now with our slide hammer, this should come out. There she is. And she's out. Definitely sabotaged the little bearings inside, but at least we got this out and we didn't interfere with our plug inside. Okay, so check it out. There is that plug that I was mentioning in there. So I've got the bore all cleaned out. Now we can go ahead and get our new pilot bearing, install it, and we can start the fun part. All right, and before I disassemble this is the setup. So came in here, grabbed it, and pulled that out. So I'll link this tool down below where you guys can pick one up. I don't know how else you'd get this out with normal tools, but definitely pick yourself up one of those. All right, so here is our bearing. We're installing the same style. There is an O-ring on here, so make sure you do the correct orientation. You can see here, this is just a flat surface. The inner surface has the inner lip that also rotates. So this one goes in like this. O-ring faces our transmission towards the back. So we'll go ahead and we'll insert this and we'll get this flush. All right, there we go. It's now installed flush. All right, so we got our pilot bearing installed. They give you 3 different styles of pilot bearing just in case you need. So the one we already installed, but has a complete list of instructions on which pilot bearing you may or may not need for your application. So just go through it, just make sure, but we're good to go. That step is done. And then next step up, we're gonna be talking about our solid street twin installations and how this all fits together. So you'll notice that there is a paint marking because this is a balanced setup. So we have to make sure that everything lines up. What we're gonna do is we're gonna remove our bolts that hold in our pressure plate, remove them evenly, and we're going to keep everything in line because again, this does have to go in a certain order. Also, we do have our alignment tool once we get to that step, but for now, let's disassemble this and then we're going to get to our flywheel because I got to go ahead and get this flywheel on the vehicle. All right, so we removed all of the nuts from the pressure plate, so we're going to go ahead and start lifting this up, and we got to be cautious of how this is all assembled because we don't want to mix up the order. The way that we see it here and remove it here is the exact way that we need to have it. So obviously we're not going to install it with paper, but you see how this looks. This thing is freaking, this thing is so nice, you guys. All right, so here we go. Take this out. It does have separating paper between it, so we'll remove that as we go. That way we're ready, but I'm not going to flip any of these upside down, do anything funny. So again, take note of the paint marking. That's obviously going to go right there. Should be one more piece of paper, and there is. So that's going to go there, and then our last disc on the bottom. Then our last disc. I cannot wait to see what this thing feels like. Holy moly! That isn't the nicest flywheel I've ever seen. So we're going to put this off to the side right here. Keep everything in order, keep our paint marks all ready, and now we can go ahead and install this on the vehicle. Jeez, I can't get over how nice this is. Also, there is these separating washers. Make sure we don't mess with them, drop one, lose one. We gotta keep these on here because those are the correct spacing. Man, I am not gonna stop drooling over this freaking thing. So anyways, I gotta lay it out. I almost don't want to put it in the car. It's too nice. It's too nice for the Z06. So I do like the fact that it says made in the USA, you guys. Now more than ever, I feel like that's very important. So anyways, let's go ahead. We're going to take this, bolt it up to the car. It has brand new hardware as well. So we got our bolts as well. And look at that, ARP fasteners are supplied with this, you guys. They are not messing around with this clutch. So we'll go ahead, use the new ARP bolts, get this torqued down, and get it on there. Okay, the other thing we're doing is I'm putting medium strength blue Loctite on our actual bolts because you do have to put some sort of sealant on them. So Loctite, sealant, it's your personal preference, but you want to put something on them. Otherwise oil can actually seep past the bolts. So make sure you put something on the bolts. Let's get them in there. All right, so check that out. So we've got our flywheel in here. Just make sure that these here, you can see that they will want to potentially walk off. So make sure all your spacers are still on. So there we go. Everything is in here, as you can see. So what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna clean off my surfaces just in case there's any shipping oil or anything like that. So clean this off so that it's, or even just, you know, fingerprints and stuff from me installing it. Make sure it's super clean, ready to go. As far as torque on these, I went in 3 steps. So I went 15 foot-pounds, 37, and then finished with 74 foot-pounds. So just went with the OEM specification on our bolts here. And that's all tightened down and torqued. I didn't need really anything to hold it with. I was able to, since this flywheel has these large openings, I was actually able to just put my hand and grab the large opening and prevent the engine from turning over. So did it that way. Those are all torqued. Now let's go ahead, like I said, clean this off. we'll start getting our plates in here and get that pressure plate on. Same thing with our pressure plate. I'm gonna go ahead and just make sure that there's no oils on here, so we'll clean it all off. Okay, pressure plate is completely clean and oil free. I'm also going to do the center disc as well, just to be sure. So just in case there happens to be any oil on this, just for shipping purposes, I'm gonna clean off both sides of this. All right, so let's go ahead and install our discs, and then we can put the pressure plate on after. All right, so what we're gonna do is take our alignment tool and just make this easier on ourselves. So we've got this clutch disc, our floater, and then the one in behind it, same way we removed it. But we'll go ahead, we'll install this tool now. Installing this here is also gonna help to hold everything in place. So there's our alignment tool. You can see here flywheel side, but again, we didn't change the order of any of that. So we'll pop this in here. We got our marking, we'll match it up with over here on the flywheel. Okay. There we go, that's in place. So you'll notice this fits freely in and out for our pilot, but you will notice if you let go of the pressure that it sags and this disc kind of hangs lower. There's a ton of tension on that. So when we actually go to tighten down the pressure plate, we do want to make sure we're holding everything up to try to get everything in the correct position. Otherwise, if you tighten this all down, the transmission could have issues going in, and then you have to loosen off your pressure plate and do it all over again. So kind of want to make sure that once you tighten it down, this goes in and out like that. Otherwise, you'll run into issues. Okay, so we'll take our pressure plate. Again, our paint mark is going to line up with everything else. And get this into position. Kind of wiggle it down onto the studs here. All right. And then I'm just gonna throw one of these ARP nuts on the top here just to make sure nothing comes off on us while we position some stuff. All right, so I got one nut on the pressure plate, just loose on the top. But you'll notice here, see how this tool is not perfectly centered, but we can actually lift it up like that. So we wanna make sure that this is as centered as possible. Some people will actually get a metal locating pin as well, but it's up to you what you guys wanna try and do. All right, so now we're gonna get the rest of these pressure plate nuts on here. I did put just a dab of blue Loctite on them. Instruction says you can, or it's up to you really, personal preference, but I just put a little dab on it, nothing crazy, but I only went with blue. Some people will get out of hand with that stuff and try to put red on it like they're never gonna take it apart again. Red isn't necessarily permanent, but it's definitely makes things a lot more hectic to service later. So I'm gonna get these on here, and then we're gonna go in a crisscross pattern. Again, I'm gonna hold this up just slightly because it does have a tendency to sag, as you can see here. So I'll hold that up centered, kind of just hold it up in the center and try to apply inward pressure as I do the crisscross pattern. Because otherwise, if you try to come in here with the transmission, you're not gonna be able to get it in, unfortunately. It's just one of those things. Been there, done that. So again, I'm gonna try to get this as centered as possible, and then we'll go ahead in a crisscross pattern, little by little. Okay, so everything looks good. This slides in and out nice, and you can look through here and kind of see where the edge of your friction disc is in relative to the pressure plate and the other discs. Kind of gets you an idea, like I said, for using these plastic tools. But anyways, that's in there. Everything's tight in a crisscross pattern. Now we're gonna go ahead and torque this. So 35 to 38 foot-pounds is what Centerforce recommends, so let's get to it. All right, I will double check everything, but everything's torqued. All right, so I reinstalled the transmission. You guys didn't miss anything there, and it's gonna depend on what vehicle you're actually running and whatnot. But I wanna show you guys this thing in action. So you can see here, we've got the Pro Charger kit on it. It made 525 at the wheel, so we are definitely working this clutch. And I'm here at Sebring Raceway. Let me show you guys us racing at the actual track. This was the intermediate advanced group, and like I said, first time out. So for first time out with the car, I think we did pretty well. So we're passing a bunch of cars, and you know, just I can only put in, unfortunately, like one solid lap, maybe two, before our water temp. We've been absolutely beating on this car, you guys. We've gone to several events now. So we've gone to Sebring for an entire track day session. We did 5 30-minute sessions on the car. Then we went to LS Fest, Texas, competed there in the Grand Champion, so the car was getting worked there. Then we went to LS Fest East, again competing in Grand Champion, worked the heck out of the car there. And the clutch has been absolutely solid. So happy to report everything's working good, you guys. We've since taken off the supercharger and we're actually running naturally aspirated now because it was getting way too hot on Sebring when we were racing on the track here in the summertime months. But car works awesome. I would highly recommend this clutch. I'll keep you guys updated if anything changes, but so far we are putting this thing through the absolute test, beating on it, and it is just taking whatever we can throw at it. So thanks for watching, you guys. Give this video a thumbs up if you found it helpful or informative. I will link the clutch down in the description below that we used on this car so you guys can check it out. Thanks again. See you guys on the next video.